The movie opens with a bus full of doctors being transported to a research facility. Fred, a scientist, overhears the woman on the radio telling them that the coral outbreak has gotten out of control. A disease with no known cure. Several people have been infected, but only a few have been receiving treatment. When Fred gets to the lab, her lab partner tells her that the children are being taken to quarantine centers. This does not sit well with Fred, who thinks that centers are no place to keep children. She decides to visit her boss and goes up to pay him a visit to his office. On her way there, she greets a child named Michael, who informs her that one of his friends was taken away. He then asks Fred when he can leave the facility. She promises him that he can leave soon. Fred then arrives at the top floor and asks the receptionist if she can see John. Before she can reply, an old man sitting in the lobby calls out to her. He asks her if John is sick. She tells him that he is, to which he replies that she should forget about him since there is no hope for a cure. Fred ignores him and leaves. She wears a hazmat suit and goes towards the basement. Suddenly, she hears footsteps behind her. She turns around to see if anyone is following her but does not see anyone. She brushes off her concerns and begins to move forward. She hears a door locking behind her but does not stay long enough to inspect it. Soon, she reaches the end of the hallway and opens a door that leads outside. Before she can go outside, someone hits her with a metal pipe. Her helmet is broken and suddenly gas fills her vision, causing her to lose consciousness. Fred starts to regain consciousness, and finds herself surrounded by darkness. A red light blinks above her head, showing that she is trapped inside a tin can-like box. She has difficulty breathing and immediately begins to hyperventilate and chokes on the feeding tube in her mouth. Feeling lost and confused about her whereabouts, Fred starts to move around trying to free herself. Soon, an automated voice comes on and welcomes her back. Trying to make sense of where she is, she begins to cry. All of a sudden, she hears a loud sound, and the tin can she is in begins to shake. This makes Fred open her eyes. She felt disoriented but begins to unhook the wires and tubes attached to her. She then takes out the feeding tube from her mouth and starts feeling around to make sense of where she is trapped. With her feet in the water, a catheter attached to her, she starts to bang on the walls and screams for help. Once again, on the brink of losing consciousness, Fred hears John calling out to her. She opens her eyes again and asks John what is going on. He tells her he does not know what is going on either and that he is trapped just like her. Fred calls out for help again and tells them to let her out. She tells John that she needs to get out of the can because he had found the cure. She wanted to help everyone before it was too late. John tells her that he thinks that the two of them have been trapped there for a long time. This causes her to panic and she asks him why anyone would want to trap them. When John tries to calm her down, she tells him that the two of them are trapped inside what looks like a tomb and that the preservation chambers were not meant for them. Just then, Fred hears the water bubbling. When she looks down, she starts to move things around to make sense of why the water is bubbling. When John asks her what she is doing, she tells him that she thinks there is an air vent that is causing the water to bubble. She tries to open the vent but does not have any tools to help her break the latch. She then hears whistling. The man that she had seen in the lobby calls out to her and tells her to use her catheter to break the latch open. After a little struggle, she manages to open the vent and is able to look outside of the can. She tells them that there are other cans along with theirs but she does not recognize the place. Just then, she hears doors opening and footsteps. Not being able to see who is outside, she calls out to them and tells them to help her. Despite her begging, no one pays any attention to her and they continue working, before leaving the room once again. The man once again tells them that people had been coming inside the room and taking people trapped inside the can outside. He then tells Fred that he thinks that he will be taken next. Soon enough, the old man is taken away. Fred starts to lose hope when more time passes by and no one comes to help them. Lost in her own thoughts, she gets a flashback where she gets home from the lab and has an argument with John, who was waiting for her to get back. During their argument, he shows Fret that he has been infected. When he lifts his shirt, she notices coral-like parasites growing on his stomach. She is pulled out of her flashback when she hears crying. John calls out to the crying woman and they find that it is Darcy, a woman who had worked at the facility with Fret and John. John then tries to calm her down and tells her that they are all with her. When the woman continues to panic, Fret calls out to Darcy and tells her to pull the feeding tube out of her mouth so that she can breathe. Darcy pulls the tube out of her mouth and manages to calm down. She then asks Fret where Michael is, but she does not respond, knowing that it is likely her son was killed. John lies to her and tells her that Michael was okay and that he was getting treated back at the facility. While waiting for help, Fret realizes that the water their feet were in had bacteria inside it. She then starts kicking at one of the walls to try and open it. Suddenly, her can falls over, causing all of the water to leak out. Fret manages to not get hurt and lies there trying to figure out her next move. Just then, she hears the doors opening once again and looks out of the air vent. She notices that people covered in armor enter the room and go towards a can. They open it and an old woman falls out. The woman was covered in the coral-like parasite. Fret calls out to her and tells her to unlock her door so that she can help her. The woman helplessly looks at Fret before she is dragged away to a machine that crushes and kills her. Horrified at what she had witnessed, Fret sits back down in her can. When John asks her what she has seen, she tells him that the woman was put down. Meanwhile, another man named Wayne wakes up as well. John at first does not believe Fret, but soon accepts it when they begin hearing strange loud noise and screams. Everyone begins to panic as well, knowing that no help was coming for them. Fret lies down in the can and begins to kick at the door to try and open it. During this, she gets another flashback. In this flashback, Fret had just gotten back from work when she notices sounds coming from her bedroom. She goes closer to check and finds that John was having an affair behind her back. Since he was her husband, the argument that the two of them had gotten into in her last flashback was because he had been cheating on her. In the present time, Fret finally manages to open the door. She gets out of the can and tells everyone that she is going to help them. However, before she can help anyone, one of the men covered in the armor sprays her with gas again. This time, Fret manages to fight back and takes down the man. She gets up and heads towards the door in front of her. Suddenly, she gets intense flashes and begins to scream before everything goes dark. In the next scene, two men in armor start to look around for Fret and lock the facility to stop her from leaving. They noticed blood on the floor, along with Fret's wedding ring. One of them takes off his mask and it is revealed that he was Fret's lab partner. Assuming that she is dead, they stop looking for her and continue with their work. They open a strange machine and a cocoon falls out of it with a child inside it. Darcy begins calling out for Michael and begs the men to spare her child. When they refuse to listen to her, she tries talking to Michael and instructs him to do whatever the men tell him to do, in the hopes that it will save her child's life. The men then pick up the cocoon and drop it into the machine as well, where it is crushed. Hearing the loud noise, Darcy begins to cry. John calls her name and lies to her that he can see outside his can and that Michael is still alive. She continues to cry and tells John that she should have never listened to him and helped trap Fret. Meanwhile, the armored guards take John out of his can. His body was partially covered with the coral parasite which was slowly killing him. One of them stabs John and is about to take him to be crushed when he starts to crawl away. He tells the guard that he had helped create the facility and did not understand why he was being treated like this. All of a sudden, another armored guard attacks the guard standing over John and manages to take it down. The guard then asks John to explain what he was talking about. John explains that he had gotten a job at the same facility that Fret worked at. When he saw that she had figured out the cure, he had stolen it from her and sold it off for a large amount of money. Hearing this, the guard takes off the mask and it is revealed that it is no other than Fret. She throws her wedding ring onto John's palm and tells him that it is over, referring to both the situation and their relationship. Knowing that John had selfishly sold off the cure for money, and risked millions of lives, she could no longer let him live. The movie ends with Fred letting John bleed out on an operating table. That is it for today's recap. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button and check out the other videos from our channel.